Hello friends, my name is Diane and today I'm going to walk you through creating warm winter light using chalk pastel. Thank you so much for joining me and let's get started. So welcome and thank you for joining me on this journey. Before we get started, I'm just going to walk you through the materials we need, which are very few. You need a set of pastels. I obviously have a set with a lot of colors in it. You do not need to have one this extensive. And if you have a much smaller set, what you do is just sort of improvise. For example, if I'm using a bluish purple, you would use your blue and layer a little bit of purple into it. If it's a grayish bluish purple, you would add a little bit of gray to yours and so on. Um, but I am going to be talking through as though you have a larger set for those of us who have a larger set. Um, you also need the printout of your reference that we're going to be copying a piece of. We're only going to be doing part of the sky, part of the ground, and a tree trunk or two, a little bit of branch work, just for the sake of exploring warm winter light on a snowy scene in chalk pastel. This image is a painting by Nils Hans Christensen. It's called Snow Scene dash Wanstead Park or Wanstead Park. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a detail from that painting. It was done in the 19th century. It's oil on canvas. You can find all that information below on your screen written down so that you can pause the video, search for the image, print it out, and come back with your printout that we can work from. So with that said, we'll get started with just layering on some whites as a base. So the sky is peachy pink, kind of a warm color. The snow is also kind of warmish for blues and purples, which are thought of as cool colors, but it's a warmer blue, kind of an aqua blue, and a pinky purple, sort of a reddish purple. So they're both kind of warm, but the sky is warmer. So for the base of the sky, we're going to use an off-white, like a whitish yellow. If you only have white and yellow, then put white down first and a little bit of yellow over it, and then you can go back with the white and blend them together. So typically chalk pastels get a little dirty just from use, so you just want to rub it on your scratch paper or on the side of your paper to clean it first, and then we're going to color a nice base of this light ivory yellowy white for the sky. And color a pretty big chunk just so you have enough area to work in. You can always not use it all. I'm coloring horizontally because even though there's no real sense of clouds or anything, skies tend to be horizontal in nature. So does snow. So you just want to go in that direction from the get-go. And then for the snow, I mentioned it was warmer than the sky, but not as warm. So we're just going to use a plain white, plain bright white for the base. And you can see chalk pastel creates dust as it is chalky. So you can pick it up and shake it off in a nearby trash can, or you can blow off the dust. Don't wipe it because you'll kind of smear your pastel, but you can, on that note, purposefully smear it with one finger just to kind of blend it and get it to cover the whole paper. And I'm just going to go right into my white from my yellow here because it really doesn't, they're so similar, it really doesn't matter. Oh, you know, something else you could have, which you probably want, is a cloth to wipe your finger on. So just have something, a paper towel, old rag, whatever, because your fingers get pretty dusty and dirty during this process. So it's nice to have something nearby to wipe them off with. So now that we've got our base on, we're going to start layering the peaches and pinks and grays and things. So I'm going to pick out sort of a, I guess, a peachy pink, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that one will work. And just kind of put some of that along the base of the sky and up through the middle, a little higher than I think I need to. And I'm also going to use some orangey yellow over here on the left because the light gets much brighter over here. And I'm not going all the way over to the left. I'm just kind of putting it here as a presence to create a transition for the pink over to the left side of the page. And I'm also going to use kind of a rose color at the top. Actually, much deeper than a rose color. I'm going to use this really bright, it's super intense purpley red, But the cool thing about pastel is the pressure means everything. So just don't press very hard. Just put in a very light layer of that at the top. And I'm going to pull a little bit of it down into the other colors so that they transition more fluidly. And again, if you don't have a magenta reddish purple, just use mostly red with a little bit of purple over it. So that's a good first layer for the sky, and now I'm going to blend them together. And because I colored so horizontally, I'm actually going to blend in circles to break it up a little bit, because I don't actually want it to appear horizontal. I just did that because, as I mentioned, skies tend to go horizontal. So it's a good first way of doing it. But then I'm going to contrast that with circular blending to soften it a little bit. So that's pretty good color matching for the center and left part. I'm going to move over to the right. By the way, I could have done this before I blended. I just blended first. I don't know why, but you can certainly choose to do that in either order. I'm going to put some gray down because the right side of the sky is pretty gray, on the top right especially, but as I move down, lighter, lighter, lighter. And it's a little bit on the bluish side. So I'm going to use a little, kind of a turquoisey blue almost. So I'm going to use a little bit of kind of again, a super bright color that has no business being in this picture, but it's wonderful for just adding hints. So I'm going to add a hint of that turquoise blue over the top edge here, and then blend it. And again, kind of doing circles. And really making sure those colors marry, just blending everything together so they transition really nicely. So that's good for our sky base. For the snow base, we already put the white down. You can see there's this lovely light blue and the lovely light pink, which are sort of the main colors. So we're going to start with those. I'm going to pick out kind of a rosy, dusty pink for this because it's not very bright at all. If you only have a bright pink or a bright red, you can use red with a little tiny bit of blue in it to make it more purpley, and some gray, and then blend it with white. So I'm putting just hints of the color kind of along the bottom, leaving some space showing for some bluer parts. And then I'm going to put the blue in between the pinks and into the pinks a little bit, for the same reason I did it in the sky, because you want some sense of transition between the colors. There's not a hard edge between anything here. And I'm loosely copying the pattern here, but it's not going to be exact. This is just a color study, so it's very interpreted. And I'm blending very horizontally here rather than doing circles, because the tree shadows in the snow really do lend itself to a horizontalness there. And you can see here I'm blending, but nothing's really happening. The reason is there was no white down. So that's a really good example of why to put white down first. It really helps receive the colors on top of it and blend much more nicely. So there's our snow. And then in the background here, we'll do, it's kind of a blue-gray. So we'll do a bluish color first. Let's see, I'm picking and choosing here. Kind of that looks about right. Yeah. So I'm going to put this down along the horizon, and I can already see that's too blue. Blow off the dust. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of red to neutralize it. And this is a darker red because I'm just trying to add a little bit of a purpley sense to it. Purpley hint. And then when I blend this one, I'm going to be kind of careful because I actually want there to be some sense of an edge between the snow and whatever that is, mountain or trees. So I'm going to keep the edge of my finger along that bottom for right now to keep it sharp, using the width of my finger along the top because that's really blended into the sky kind of nicely. Then I'm going to wipe my finger off and go back and soften the bottom edge. So now I'm just going very horizontal and I'm not pressing very hard, just enough to get it a little bit soft. So that color, I'm happy with that. That came out nicely. So I'm going to use kind of the same combination for the, not the trees themselves, but this sort of ghostly presence of branches in the background. So I'm going to use the blue gray and just color up kind of in a, I don't know, a bushy sort of way. Like I'm starting at the bottom and kind of going out to the sides to create a little bit of branchiness. And then I'm going to use the red and go over that, same thing. To add a little bit of purpliness to it. Same exact combination I used for the mountains. And then when I blend, I'm going to start in the middle and just blend right up the center as a way to get started. And then I'm going to kind of, or actually I'm going to wipe my finger off because I feel like I have too much pastel. And then I'm going to do circles out to the side. And that'll help create that illusion of tree-likeness against the sky. So we've got something like that as our base. And now we can get into the tree itself. So I'm just going to pick a tree. I'm going to do this one because it seems to be the most defined. You can certainly do multiple trees if you'd like, but I'm going to put this one in first. So that is going to be kind of a golden brown and a dark brown for a base. So I'm going to use this sort of golden brown first, lighter brown, and I'm just inventing the shape. So it looks like it starts from the left. I'm not pressing hard because as you can see, there's green and orange and other colors that I'm going to go over this with. So I'm just using this as a way to define the shape of the tree. And then I'm going to go over it. So I don't want this color to be dominant. It's just a way of drawing it. So it does something like that. I'm not going to go all the way to the top. I just stopped about right there. And then I'm going to put a little bit of this color into the middle at the base because there does seem to be a bit of a golden brown down there. And then I'm going to put in, let's see, what should I do next? I guess we'll do the orangey color next because it's light and that'll help define the left edge. So I'm pressing very hard with just a corner of the pastel to get that in there, and just a little bit, not a whole lot right there. And then I'll use the olivey green coming up right next to the orange, pressing hard to get it to really stay and stick. And I'm going to put some lines of the olive green a little higher up in the tree because that's what it appears to be doing. Blow off the dust. And I'm going to go back with a darker brown and start to put in the darks. So I'm using a corner of the pastel. If you don't have a corner, if you have a really worn down pastel, you can create a corner just by coloring on your scratch paper and you'll get a nice sharp corner eventually. It may take you a minute, but that's how you kind of get a corner on a chalk pastel. Blowing off the dust so I can see because it's sort of obscured there. And on that note, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. There we go, because I am doing more of a detailed area now. So I'm going to go up the tree trunk, and this area is darker than this pastel, but I'm just going to put this color down as a base, leaving a little sliver on the left for that hint of snow, and using a corner to sort of define the left edge a little bit more. Creating a little bit of a root shape, but really the roots turn almost blue-gray down there, so I'm not going to do that with brown. Let's see. Now I'm going to darken, which is one of the funnest things to do because you're really pushing the details. So I'm not going to use black. I don't like using black. Whenever possible, avoid it because it tends to make things look dead, even if it looks black in the picture. It's a great habit to get into to just start mixing your own blacks or using colors that are similar to black by identifying what the color really looks like to you. Like, is it a reddish black, a greenish black, a purplish black, and pick that color. Or if you do have a very simple set of pastels and you only have, say, black and purple and blue, then you can use a little bit of black, but go over it with your purple and blue to make it look a little bit more wintry and alive, or excuse me, alive in the winter, I guess, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to go over this with some purpley blue to darken. Or depending on how it printed out, you may see a different color. It may look greenish to you, or it may look brownish or reddish. So just kind of follow what you would like to do. You can make it blue purple if you want to, or you can copy whatever it is you see in your printout, your call. So we've got that, and I'm also going to use this dark color to start putting in branches. So branches, a good rule of thumb is they are thicker where they touch the tree and get thinner as they go out. So I'm going to start with a big branch, this one right here, and make it pretty thick where it touches the tree. And then as it goes out, just lift, lift, lift so it gets a little bit lighter and more faint. And you don't have to do that level of precision with every branch. Just do the main ones you see. And then for everything else, there's very little that's precise. So you can just sort of go in there and put in a whole bunch of little wispy branches, some overlapping others, some more sharp, some more blended. It's going to look very imprecise. Something like that. And I'm only doing the right side because I don't want to waste your time. So you can do the left side if you want. So that's kind of a good base for the tree. And now I'm going to go back and what I like to call noodling it a little bit. So I'm going to add kind of a light gray for these little bits of snow. Using a corner of the pastel. A little bit on top of the branch, that main branch. I'm going to put a little bit on a couple other branches just because I can, but you don't want to overdo it because then they suddenly all look like they're illuminated. I'm going to pick out a darker gray for the kind of snow that's in shadow. Something like that. And these branches up here, I'm just going to use a finger and slightly dab at to force them into the background a little bit because I don't want them to be quite that obvious. For this branch, this is a really good example. I tried to make it wispy. That didn't work out so well. So I'm going to use my original base color and try to blend it. So I'm going to try to just get a corner of the pastel, put it right on that branch, and very lightly go over it just to soften it a little bit so that it doesn't stick out as quite so crumbly in front of the sky. And let's see, what else do I want to do here? Oh yeah, the shadow on the snow. So I'm going to go back to the same blue gray I used for the mountains and the kind of tree background. By the way, I feel like I now need to blend that more to make it, so I'm going to blend in circles to make it marry with the sky a little bit more. There we go. And I'm going to use this and plant it in the tree and just pull out on the bottom in the direction of the roots. Something like that. And then I'm also going to use it for the first color of the tree shadow. So that's going to pull out to the right here. And then we're also going to use some of the pink over the top of it to make it more purpley. Sort of just dabbing it at the end there. And then I'm going to just make sure I have a pretty clean finger, starting from the end and pulling towards the left. And then I got my finger dirty again, so I'm going to do that again. Wipe, go back. And the reason I'm starting here and pulling is so that this end appears more wispy. And then for these tree shadows, I could dab them. That's not working so well. So I'm going to just use my original white and blend them. I can just kind of dab at the base a little bit and pull those the roots into the snow a little bit more. And on that note, this shadow is a little bit dark, so I'm going to go over that with some white to lighten it. And rub it out a little bit more. And then, you can sort of work this as long as you want to. Like maybe you're happy with it. Maybe that's good enough. For me, I'd like to darken my tree a little more. So I'm not using black. I'm picking out a warm gray. This is like a brownish gray. And I'm going to go back and put a little bit more dark into the dark areas of my tree and emphasize the darker branches a little bit more. So just at the very base or where I want them to show up when they're coming off of that larger branch. This also adds another color, which is nice. It just adds a little more sophistication. So you can mess with it as long as you want, but that is the basis for just replicating this particular reference and one way of creating warm winter light with chalk pastels. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.